Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Star Trek Discovery Season 4, Episode 1, Kobayashi Maru. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek Discovery, so I'll have to start with a spoiler warning for Discovery up to the Season 4 premiere. If you have not seen up to this episode, you will not want to watch this video. Otherwise, some things will be spoiled for you. So, those who are familiar with my coverage of Discovery, well, no, I'm not like what I would call a Discovery hater who thinks this show is terrible and ruining Star Trek and breaks canon, all that other BS you hear, but I have not been that positive on Discovery. In fact, the more I look back on Season 3, the more I'm convinced I actually prefer Season 2 over Season 3, and I thought in some ways Season 3 was kind of a step back. It was still decent, though. Overall, my view on Discovery is it does some things amazingly great. Like, some scenes and some character beats and some moments are, like, so good. And then other scenes and other moments are really terrible. So it's like, it's a really mixed bag that cannot like decide what kind of quality it wants to have, and it goes back and forth. So I never know what I'm going to get with Discovery. And so I wasn't really looking that forward to the Season 4. I wasn't like anticipating. I wasn't like, oh, I can't wait till Season 4 Discovery. It's more like, Season 4 Discovery's come out. I guess I might as well watch it. Hey, why not? That was more of my attitude. And to be fair, this episode impressed me more than I thought. So it did sort of get my anticipation level of the show up, and it got my excitement level for watching the rest of Season 4 up. That being said, I still have some issues. I didn't think it was perfect, but it was better than I thought it would be. It was certainly better than the Season 3 premiere, which I still stand by was too much like a Star Wars show. But anyway, I still stand by that. Anyway, so so let me get into this episode here. So we get this intro where Burnham and Book are doing these negotiations with these aliens. They're trying to, get them back in the fold of the Federation, but when they ease into it and give them dilithium crystals, and they're like totally misunderstanding, and there's this funny bit with them mistaking the cat and thinking they're holding a queen hostage or whatever. But the whole time I was watching this, I really thought this really seemed like the opening to one of the Kelvin films, Star Trek Into Darkness. And then when I watched a review for this episode after it aired, they thought that this intro was actually like the intro from Star Trek Beyond. So if you don't recall, Into Darkness, they were... Kirk and Spock were at this primitive planet, and they were trying to save them, but they misunderstood and thought they were trying to kill them, so they were chasing after them. They were running through the woods, and Kirk and Spock had to run away from them. And then the Star Trek Beyond intro is where Kirk was trying to negotiate with these aliens who was totally misunderstanding what he was saying and being hostile, but then they played it for comedic effect because the aliens ended up being like this tall. And so I didn't think about the Beyond until someone brought it up, but once they did bring it up, it made me realize that the intro was actually kind of a combination between the two, because it was like, I still maintain it was like the Into Darkness intro in the terms of, the main crew's running through the woods, chased from these aliens that are chasing after them, wanting to kill them when all they want to do is help them, and they're trying to make an exciting way to start the episode and get you in the action. But it's also like the Beyond thing with the negotiations going wrong, and they're playing it for comedy. Because the other side is misunderstanding them. So it's kind of like a combo between the two. And so to be perfectly clear, I did not like this intro. I think that's unoriginal to just take a sort of collage of what the Kelvin films did and have that as the intro. And more to the point, I did not find it funny. I actually found it quite annoying. And like the part when she's like, "Oh, you're holding a monarch captive." I'm like, "Oh my god, that's so stupid." That's so dumb. I really hated this intro. And then when they beam back and Burnham beams in the Dalethim anyway, they're like, "Oh, you still gave this to us even though we attacked you, blah, blah. Oh, you must be great." No, that wouldn't be their reaction. Reaction is, "Fuck your Dalethim crystals, we still hate you." But, the whole thing was played for jokes, and why is Book doing official negotiations instead of an ambassador with Burnham? But whatever. Who cares? I don't know. I guess it's not supposed to make sense. It is, after all, based off the Kelvin films. Anyway. So I hated the intro, but the rest of the episode, I think, did get better. Now, after they return from the planet, they reintroduce us to the crew. We see all the characters talking, and it's been a while since I watched earlier episodes of Discovery. But I have a feeling Discovery has always had this sort of tone or feel to it. But I've noticed it seemed like a lot worse and a lot more annoying in this episode, where it's very fast paced. Like the character will talk and be, "Oh, blah blah blah," and the next kid, they cut to another character who's walking and the camera pans with them and they'll say, "Ah ha ha ha," another quip, and then they cut to another character and it pans around and it'll say, "Oh no, blah 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 blah," and they quip move around. We had cameras constantly moving around, the characters are constantly walking, and boom boom cut. A very disorientating fast pace, which annoys the fuck out of me. I think it makes it harder to follow and harder to understand. I think Discovery has done this, maybe not consistently, but has done this repeatedly throughout its run. And maybe I'm just noticing this now because it's been a while since I've seen it. But I get the impression that it's actually worse. That they made it much worse. It was much more confusing and harder to follow. And oh, quip. Oh, cut. Let's spin the camera around. Let's move the camera with the people. Let's walk and talk. And I'm talking over here and I'm talking over there. Just stand still. Talk for a couple of moments. Say some words that make sense. Blah, 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 blah. Cut. That annoys the fuck out of me. It's funny because people are often comparing the quippiness to the Marvel films, which I get that it's another sci-fi fantasy franchise, and so you often want to compare sci-fi fantasy franchise to other sci-fi franchises, and plus a very popular one, much in the way season 3 was emulating Star Wars. They would say Discovery would emulate the MCU in that regard, which may be the motivation behind it, but honestly, it reminded me more of Aaron Sorkin films. Now, if you're not familiar, Aaron Sorkin has written films like Social Network. Blanky. He's also did shows like what's it called, The Newsroom or something like that. Something about news, and the one with the White House and the president. God, I'm so bad blanking. There's people gonna really barrage me for this one. God, I gotta remember. West Wing. There we go. Don't correct me in the comments. I got it there. West Wing. Anyway, and he's written a whole bunch of other movies. Anyway, he's known for having these very fast-paced, quippy dialogue, which to me, a lot of people think is brilliant, but sometimes I think it's just unrealistic. Like, people actually don't talk that way, and sometimes it's, especially if it's thrown at you too fast, it gets really annoying after a while. It kind of grates on my nerves, and I think that's definitely like the case here. Now, thankfully, they didn't do it throughout the entire episode. They did it several times. In that opening scene there, when they first went back to Discovery, and I'm like, here's Tilly, she's going to say something witty, and here's Stamets, he's going to say something witty, and the camera's going to cut and spin. I hate that. That annoyed the hell out of me. Anyway, I just don't like that for a tone. Now, I don't want to say it's not Star Trek, because I'm against gatekeeping with Star Trek. Star Trek can be whatever tone you want it to be. I don't think that tone works for Star Trek. And I think that's a different distinction than because I'm all for Star Trek trying new things. Like I love what they did with the comedy, animated comedy with Lower Decks, and digging what they're doing with Prodigy, a kids-based thing. So you can do different tones, different things with Trek. But not all the tones and things are going to work, and I don't think this one does. Just my opinion. And maybe just because I don't like it in general, it annoys me. I think it's better if you just slow down. Slow down. Say your words slowly, and then go to the next scene. Anyway, sorry. Tilly is a lieutenant, and they made no mention of her being a first officer, which is the exact correct thing to do. So it reminds me of this episode of The Simpsons where Principal Skinner has found out it wasn't really Seymour Skinner. He actually stole the name and identity from someone he served with in Vietnam. And then at the end of it, we found that the real Seymour Skinner was an asshole. So they just kicked him out of town. And the judge was like, I decree that you are actually Seymour Skinner and will never speak of this ever again. Which is one of my favorite gags. A lot of The Simpsons fans put down that episode for erasing canon, but I don't give a fuck about canon and Simpsons. It's a comedy show. Anyway, and plus the whole gag was making fun of that, saying, oh, we'll decree, and making it so the rest of the episodes can pretend like he's actually Seymour Skinner because they're just decreeing the episode that, the events of the episode never happened, which is kind of what they did at the end of Discovery Season 2. Anyway, that's what they need to do with Tilly becoming first officer. They need to just decree, and not even say it, just have it an understanding. Don't say it on the screen. Just don't acknowledge it ever again. Just pretend like it never happened because it was terrible writing. It made no sense. It was just a bunch of bullshit. And so I like that she's a lieutenant. That makes sense. Make her a lieutenant. Yes, lieutenant. Sure, promote her. Even though poor Harry Kim should have gotten promoted. But, we can't change that. Let's focus on the present. Tilly deserves this promotion as lieutenant. It makes total sense. She can work her way up through the ranks, not just jump all the way to first officer out of fucking nowhere just because she's the main character. It was contrived writing to the max. Anyway, so yes, let's just never speak of it again. She's the lieutenant now. She was never first officer. What? That never happened. What are you talking about? Anyway, what else have I got to say? So, we get introduced to the Federation president. Now, it's been, as I said, it's been a long time since I've seen, yes, and that's my Enterprise reference. The episode can make an Enterprise reference, so can I. Anyway, it's been a long time since I've seen season 3. So, if I recall, and I don't know if I'm correct on this, but I think they never showed who the Federation president. They mentioned, and people were like, well, who the fuck is the Federation president? They keep mentioning this Federation president we don't see. Now we get to meet her. They do refer to her as the new Federation president, so I don't know. But anyway, she, when I was trying to figure out her species, I guess, the resolution on my TV or was sitting too far back from it. I couldn't really tell at first. I thought, is she the Nobelin? But then I remember actually seeing from the trailer that she looked like a faint, like Cardassian. And then I looked at it and I noticed that, yeah, she had a faint Cardassian feature. So I was like, wow, that's amazing that the president of the Federation has Cardassian heritage. Now, because the features are so faint, it made me think that she wasn't like a pure bred or pure blood Cardassian. So, and it turns out like the writers have confirmed that she is part Cardassian, part Bajoran, and part human. And that's very interesting. And I love that the melding of these rival species. And because this is taking place way in the future, and so that makes total sense. And it's just, it brings a sense of like, I don't know, irony, but a sense of like, oh, that's really cool, and a sense of weirdness, a sense of, oh, this is a distant future, that someone who's part Cardassian is the president of the United Federation of Planets, and I love it. I think it's great. Now, I had my doubts about the character herself, that because I was worried that she would just be like this villain character come in, and like when she said she was going on the mission of discovery, I was like, don't do like the original series thing with the asshole Commodore being like, oh, this is my mission, I'm against everything you're doing. And she did that a little bit when she was bitching about Burnham going on the mission, but ultimately she didn't fill that role, and I hope that they don't make her a villain. I think she would be a much more interesting character if they make her. I would make the comparison to Jellicoe, a sort of antagonistic character, but one who's not a villain. Someone who just does things and operates differently. In fact, she could be a better version of Jellicoe, because Jellicoe was a terrible captain, and I already went through this in my TNG reviews. Actually, he sucked as a captain. he was. Oh, let's change the shift from 5 to 4 for no good reason. Let's just fuck up the whole routine of the ship and throw it all into chaos because I feel like it. What a terrible captain. Anyway, sorry. I won't get into that. But so they could have a similar thing with the president, but actually have her be good at her job, which so far, which I'll get into later in the video, she's correct with the stuff that she says, the stuff that she does. She's totally right. So if they play that, but have her be somewhat antagonistic to our characters, she could be a really great character. Now, if they fall back to the evil admiral, evil villain cliche, then that would just suck and she'll be a terrible character. So I'm hoping that they play their cards right here. Anywho, so what else have we got? Yeah, the camaraderie between the bridge crew, I think it's really working for me in this episode. I think I have high hopes that season 4 is going to be better than any previous seasons in this regard, because this is a complaint I had about the show, because all the bridge characters were kind of just no name, no face characters who don't care about. Now, they did slowly start to build them up a little bit over seasons 2 and 3, but I feel like they still were, in some cases, treating the audience as if they totally care and love these characters, even though they haven't earned it yet. And they still haven't earned it. But they're on their way to earning it. And I hope they develop these characters more. And I totally bought, like, in previous seasons, I didn't really buy the camaraderie between our main characters and the rest of the faithless bridge crew. It felt like unearned. It felt like, oh, they're just friends because we told you so. Whereas in this episode, I actually felt it. It felt like it's showing, not telling. And I feel like previously they've been telling, not showing, that there's a camaraderie and friendship that exists between these characters. And I totally bought it in this episode. And I think, it also helps sell me as Burnham as captain. And it almost feels like they work better as with Burnham as captain than they did even with Pike or Saru. So it helps sell Burnham as a really good captain as well. So I loved it. I hope they continue with this, and I hope they flesh out these characters more. See. Also, then we get into the whole thing with the space station being, flipping around and being in disrepair, and they're trying to save them. I have mixed feelings about this whole sequence, because part of it I thought was really good suspense. And it kept me interested, kept me engaged. But other parts were just like too CGI diarrhea. It was just like too fast-paced cuts. This is going on, blah, 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 blah. And that, like that commander who was on the station, he started off, I loved how he said something about, as the humans would say, shit show, which apparently means bad on Earth. that was good dialogue. And then he says his own alien word, and Burnham has to translate. It's like, no, that means destroyed beyond all repair. It's a nice touch. I love that touch that shows that this is an alien with their own culture, and I think that really worked. However, then later when they're on the station, Adira and Tilly, he was kind of being a dick to them for no good reason. He was being a coward, like, let's not do this, and that annoyed me. I think they could have done without that. It was kind of like, how do we create more tension? Let's make this guy cower and cause more issues. So it's like, it's not necessary. You don't You don't need it. There was enough suspense and tension in that scene. You didn't need to throw it in. I think it would have been more interesting had he acted like a normal, good Starfleet officer. But I did find his death tragic, I will say. It didn't make me cry or anything because we barely knew him. It was just some side character, but it's not supposed to, which again, it works because the show doesn't act like you should care. Or not overly care the way they did with some of these other characters that we actually don't care about. But anyway, it worked. That's what I'll say. So, what else have we got? We got... yes. So as I alluded to earlier, that we get a scene with the president confronts Burnham and says that she always puts the good of the few over the good of the many, and that she always has to try to save everyone. Now, as I mentioned before, the president is absolutely totally correct here, and I think the biggest callback to this, the biggest evidence we've seen in the show previously, was how Burnham tried to save Arium when Arium was taken over by Control, and that she refused to kill Arium even when Arium was saying, you gotta kill me because Control's gonna destroy the ship otherwise. And she still refused to do it. She still wanted to save Arium. And to be frank, she would have destroyed the ship. If it was Lieutenant Nan who intervened and killed Arium for Burnham, who refused to do it, if she wasn't there, or if Burnham had her way and stopped her, then Discovery would be destroyed. Control would wipe out the human race. She could have not only failed the mission, she would have got her entire crew destroyed and arguably the entire human race destroyed as well, and maybe Federation as well, because of her desire to save everyone. And so I think this is a very consistent character flaw, and it was actually so great for the president to call her out on this. And in fact, I rewatched the scene, and Burnham was like, oh yeah, but I did save all my people, so what the hell are you talking about? Which is very short-sighted of her, because she's forgetting about the Arium thing. That, yeah, okay, things happen to work out for you this time, but maybe next time they won't. And so... this is great storytelling. And I think this is really great storytelling because it creates a long-term, consistent character arc for Burnham that was lasted throughout the entire season, which again is why I'd argue that she actually is a fleshed out character and not just some Mary Sue, whatever those people say. Because it shows from the very beginning where she was... started the war and got her captain killed, and how that weighed on her, and how she kind of vowed never to let her friends die again because of it, and that affected her going forward, where she has this uncontrollable need to save everyone. And as I just mentioned with the Arium example, she almost got her entire ship and crew killed because of that desire to absolutely save everyone, and she's continuing that notion here. And that is yet another way in which Burnham is similar to Kirk, of course, because Kirk, infamous for saying he didn't believe in a no-win scenario, and Burnham is similar in that regard, and that's a flaw. And it's funny, they never actually called that out for Kirk. They kind of did when Spock died at the end of Star Trek 2. But really, they're starting to call it out, and the president's calling out for Burnham, which I think she's totally right. And so this could be a very interesting storyline. It's already great character building for her character throughout the years. And so if they continue this and capitalize on it, and where she is forced to face the fact that this is a huge character flaw, it could be amazing storytelling. So I'm very interested in this, and I think that that's really well done for them to continue this in that way, to focus on how her character has been built and what her flaws really are. So I guess there's other scenes with Saru on Kaminar, I guess. I don't know. I fell asleep during... No, I didn't really fall asleep when but I almost did. I don't care. I mean, I don't have anything to say about these things. I don't care. The show hasn't really given me anything to make me care about this. It's just an excuse for, it's just telling how Saru's going to get back to Discovery. Fine. You know, and I never cared for that Sakal character in the first place. I thought that was a stupid reveal that he was responsible for the burn. And so when they said, "Oh, I'm taking Sakal back to Kaminar," I was hoping that all this stuff would happen off screen. So I didn't really care for these scenes. But to be fair to them, they just had a couple of scenes where they kind of just tail end. Oh, this is how he's going back to Discovery. Fine. Whatever. Let's do that. Anyway. So overall, I think the show's still too sentimental. The characters, like the way the characters are all so lovey-dovey and like, "Oh, do you miss Saru? Oh, I know you're missing Saru. Don't worry, he'll be back soon. And oh, I love you so much, Adira. And oh, I love you too, Stamets. And I love you, and I love everyone. Let's have a smooch fest. We're so sentimental." It seems kind of antithetical to the way, like, Starfleet ships operate in, say, like, Next Generation, not even to mention Deep Space Nine, and even Voyager, who they were all friendly with each other, but they still maintained a level of, like, professionalism and distance because they're going to have to order people to death and all this sort of thing. And so it's actually a bad idea to get so incredibly attached and sentimental. And maybe that is something season 4 is going to address, and address like, well, man, this is not a good thing that you're always so sentimental. But I don't know. I think I feel like the show has been telling me for 3 years that that's a good thing. So, which it isn't really. Anyway, and what else I gotta say? So, so Booker's planet is destroyed. His brother and nephew are killed, and his entire homeworld is destroyed. And it seems like I should care. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, a whole planet being destroyed is a terrible thing, and so we know that on the face of it, such as in, say, Star Wars A New Hope, when we saw Princess Leia, her planet Alderaan, get destroyed by the Death Star is a huge consequence. But I wasn't like weeping or emotionally affected by it because I didn't know anyone on Alderaan. I didn't really know any of the characters, but it was a good effective. It worked for the story. It has an effective motivation. Where it seems like in this episode they're trying to make it seem like the destruction of Vulcan in the Kelvin films, because the Kelvin films, yes, let's try to be like the damn Kelvin films as much as possible. and I don't care. I mean, as I said, like, destruction of planets is a terrible thing, so I care. I guess I would say I care to that extent, but I'm not crying, "Oh my God, Booker lost his brother and nephew who I barely knew and didn't really care about their storyline." I don't care. Ultimately, I wasn't like it wasn't like this huge emotional impact the way, say, the destruction of Vulcan was in that crappy reboot. So, because in that case, like, I knew Vulcans, I knew Spock, and I knew his mother, and I really cared for these characters. I barely know Book, and I don't even hardly know at all his brother, or nor do I care about them. So, yeah, it's sad. It's a definitely sad loss of life, especially the entire planet. It's a huge deal, and it's a great way to start this mystery, but I never cared about them. I'm not going to shed any tears. Anyway, so yeah, it begins this huge mystery for season 4. Oh, what's the weird anomaly thingy? And historically, Discovery has not handled these long-term mysteries very well, and I really got the strong feeling that they needed to move away from them. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes with this one. We'll see if they handle it better. They make it more interesting, especially if they're gonna like draw it out the way they've drawn out previous mysteries, such as, say, the burn. They better come up with a better, more satisfying resolution, or otherwise I'm just gonna, I don't know. Discovery's still so hit and miss for me. It's like some things they do so good and other things they do so bad. Anyway, my rating for Kobayashi Maru out of 10, I'm gonna give this a 7. I was torn between a 7 and an 8, but I think I'm going to stick. I don't think it's quite reached the 8-ness for me. I'm going to stick to a 7, very good. It is a high 7, to be sure, but a 7 nonetheless. It was, as I said, it got me interested in the season, which I wasn't before. I kind of lost my enthusiasm for this show, but it's kind of built some of that enthusiasm back by having like great long-term story arcs with Burnham, introducing characters that they could do interesting things with, ignoring stupid shit they did last season that they never should have done. That's a positive, and having a storyline that kept me engaged. But it's still carrying some of these flaws, like that fast-paced, let's talk to this and turn around, or being way too over sentimental and having to give Saru gave these impassioned speeches that I don't really care about. It just seemed like fluff to me, and that intro is terrible. So a mixed bag, but ultimately. It got me excited for Discovery, so I gotta call that a good episode. So that's it for my review of Kobayashi Maru. I shall be back next week and every week here on After to cover Discovery. So be sure to check out my channel for that. Also, check out my channel as I cover all other things Star Trek, as well as other shows such as The Expanse, which will be returning soon, Star Wars The Clone Wars, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.